Yes.
I was wondering if you could say more about what you meant by defining proposition for an emotion. So I noticed you were careful to put it in quotation marks and to say that it was an outline. But I'm still confused by the language. Do you think that emotions have to be propositional in character? I mean, so there's the effective element, and then do you think that there's actually something propositional? Or is this just some sort of gesturing that I can take care of?
No, I do think that emotions, the kind of emotions anyway that I'm talking about, they are propositional. I don't know about the moods and things, but yeah. And so I want to say even the emotions of chipmunks are propositional, right? And so it doesn't, being propositional doesn't require either that it be elicited by a proposition. Now, that's the kind of case of reading the story about Lisa, right? There we're actually getting linguistic input, and it's what's giving content to our emotion. So that's one kind of case. Another kind of case is where I'm feeling anxious about my kid, but I'm not very articulate about it. I'm not thinking about it. And then, in retrospect, I have to explain why and then I use words, and I can do it either accurately or inaccurately. And so I show that the state was propositional by virtue of giving it a propositional interpretation. And then the most distant kind of case is the case of the chipmunk, right, who's afraid of something, or who loves his mate, or is happy to have food, or something like this. And there, I think what we do is we say, okay, well, chipmunks are enough like human beings, so that the chipmunk fear is a little bit like human fear. And now it's going to have something like the same structure. There's going to be threats, and there's going to be, the thing that's threatened. Maybe it's the young, or maybe it's just me. I'm threatened, and so on. So that's what I want to say about the emotions that go by labels, like they're types like anger, envy, jealousy, hope, and so forth. Those are all, every episode of those is going to be propositional in one of these three senses that I've just, yeah.
Okay, and just how fine, I mean, so you said something that I think most answers, but how fine-grained do you have to have this propositional character? For instance, with the indignation example, I was following you up until the point where you're like, and then let's get him. And I thought, cool. So I mean, do I not count anymore as indignation? And if not, then I worry about these sorts of chipmunk cases. And these things like
Okay.
that.
Well, yeah. There may be, maybe there are variants of indignation. We've got a fairly rich vocabulary for anger types. So we've got anger, indignation, resentment, let's see, dudgeon. You could give what? High dudgeon. That's high dudgeon. Low dudgeon, high dudgeon. So you can give if you look for look in the dictionary or the thesaurus maybe for all the sort of semi-synonyms of anger, you might find 10 or so, and then you might be able to actually to assign somewhat different propositions to these. I think indignation is a real strong, sort of self-righteous kind of anger that does want to punish. So if somebody isn't, if somebody says, I am indignant, and I say, well, let's give him a big hug. You're going to think that's improper. And if I say, let's get him, you're going to understand why. People resist the idea that anger is nasty, but I think it's sometimes just out of sort of therapeutic sentimentality that they do that.
We'll take one more question.
Okay, I feel like I was following up until we started talking about chipmunks.
propositional. We have the ability to draw empathetic analogies. So can you really have like emotions that would speak to broader injunctions, like rather than emotions kind of existing in a dialectical relationship with those already existing?
Yeah, I'm not sure, I know what you mean by injunctions.
Like when you're talking about like the virtues, like you already have to have a kind of feel like you're talking about. You have to have a certain moral formation in order to recognize these broader injunctions, like, I mean, I'm thinking of lines at this point, so like charity or justice or things like that.
An injunction is a command then?
Yeah, like one that's broader and not situational. Like I like the differentiation you made when talking about episodic moral beliefs. So maybe I'm just getting your thought confused. So could you clarify, like, I mean, I was thinking kind of like these pre-existing injunctions that like, help delineate more out like emotions, like the use of emotions and moral judgment, and in return, the emotions can speak to like the situational or episodic beliefs that can kind of speak over and against those broader injunctions. But if we're talking about chipmunks, I don't really.
So a broad injunction would be, an example would be treat equals equally.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you see a case of egregious inequality being of a certain sort, you get upset or you get angry. Now, yeah, so I suppose there's some stories that you could tell. I mean, the sentimentalists, the Scots, Enlightenment people, they thought that you could sort of trace all the moral principles back to emotional responses of some sort. That's a pretty problematic sort of position to me. And it's not the sort of thing that Aristotle does with the emotions. He doesn't say, we get our concept of justice from the emotions. He says, if you're a just person, then you'll take pleasure in just actions. So it works the other way. You get the principles, you might say, and then people need to conform their emotions to the principles. It's not as though you get the principles from the emotions. But the sentimentalists want to do it the other way around. And it's very complicated because you've got to figure out which emotions you're going to get the principles from, right? Whose emotions are you going to get the principles from? And so you say, well, paradigm human emotions. Well, there are a lot of bad paradigm human emotions, like envy. Nobody wants to derive moral principles from envy. I'm very skeptical about the sentimentalist project. I don't know whether I'm answering your question at all, actually. You think I am?
In a manner.
Our speaker.